Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. In today's video we're going to look at getting started with the Skaven in Warhammer Age of Sigmar using the 2025 Holiday Battleforce box set, the Skryre Warpswarm. In this video we'll give you a brief overview of who the Skaven are, their basic army rules, and then we'll look to use this box set as an initial starting point for the force, and throughout the video look at other units we can use to expand upon the initial box set with, finishing off the video with a fleshed out 1000 point army list for you to use in your games of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. The Skaven are an insidious, malevolent race of humanoid ratmen and one of the most prolific races in the mortal realms. They follow an irregular cycle. They fight amongst themselves, expand their under-empire, multiply their population and surge to the surface to unleash sudden havoc, and then eventually they Skaven weaken, often due to violent treachery of the clans, and skulk back to their lair, their decay and entropy made manifest. Most stand a little shorter than a man, with a wiry build and whip-thin muscles curled around their limbs, their hands and feet equipped with vicious claws. Their movements are swift but jerky, their eyes red and their long jaws filled with sharp incisors. Legends claim that the horned rat brought the first Skaven into the realms in his jaws and scattered them into the darkest corners, where they quickly multiplied to become the great first clans. As many as 13 clans made up this initial invasion, as well as the Grey Seers of the Master Clan. Since the end times, the Skaven's capital Blight City was merged into the realm of chaos when their god, the Great Horned Rat, ascended into the pantheon of the Dark Gods. However, their use of arcane machinery went wayward and Blight City sank into the edges of the realms, straddling reality. From this position, they could gnaw tunnels into the mortal realms and other realms beyond. And so, before we get into looking at the Skaven units that come inside the box set and how to expand upon them, we are going to look at the Skaven army rules, their battle traits as they're known for the army. Now, the Skaven ones, first of all, start off with the Lurking Vermintide, and this combines with Gnawhole Ambush. Essentially, one of these allows you to take units in your army and deploy them off table in reserves in the tunnels below. The other one allows you to bring them on during the course of the game. It's a pretty cool ability to have access to. You place them around Gnawholes, which are faction terrain pieces. We'll talk about them later. But you know, having reactionary abilities to take units off, to react to what your opponent's doing, to sort of plug holes in your line, to take advantage of holes you've created in your enemy's line, to even just, you know, nab objectives, complete battle tactics, all that sort of stuff. It's a really cool ability to have. Always 3 claw steps ahead allows you to move a non-monster Skaven unit during your enemy's hero phase. Now, how abilities work means your opponent will get to use all their abilities first, so you can't sort of jump out of range of spells and stuff like that. But it does mean if your opponent sort of does, say, movement debuffs, you can get extra movement off one of your units that gets a movement debuff to sort of negate the effects of that. You could also, you know, if your opponent sort of kills something off an objective, kills a screen, you have the potential to move other screens in the way, other sort of chaff, pull back units to sort of plug gaps where you need. Another cool reactionary ability, much like the Gnawholes. We then also have 2 quick to hit, where you don't suffer mortal damage from retreating. Another cool ability that stops your opponent being able to pin your units down in fear of you taking mortal damage from fleeing. And then Splinters of the Vermin Dude means you can use your 3 Gnawholes. If you have less than 3 during the course of the game, you essentially get to place one. So a cool way to make sure you always have Gnawholes on the table when you need them. Today's video is sponsored by Gap Games, a fantastic miniature wargaming store in Queensland, Australia. They stock a wide variety of miniature wargames, from all things Games Workshop to some of my personal favourites, Conquest, The Last Argument of Kings, and all things Modifius wargames as well. Use our affiliate code in the link below to help support both this fantastic store and the channel as well. And so, moving on to the box set. Leading the box set is a Skaven character called the Arch-Warlock. This is sort of the leader of all the Warlock sort of characters you have access to in your army. You'll notice there's a ton of them if you start reading up about the army. The Arch-Warlock is the leader one. 4+ save, 5 health. For a Skaven, that is pretty decent in all honesty. you've got a short but pretty cool combat shooting attack. What I mean by combat shooting attack is you have shoot in combat on the weapon, so it allows you to fire this while you're in combat. So cool to always get some more damage out of this. You've got a couple of decent combat attacks, which for a wizard is not that normal. Your Wizard 1 rule allows you to cast and unbind one spell per turn, or use it to get rid of enemy sort of spells that are on the table in form of manifestations. And your Overseers of the Engine Covens ability allows you to work well with some of the weapon teams you have access to give a free covering fire to a Skaven unit holding within 13 once per turn. This allows you to save command points for other things you need to use for your force. All in all, relatively cheap at 150 points. On the more expensive side when you consider it's a Skaven character, however, but still useful nonetheless, and paired with some of the units we're going to get in the initial box set, really cool. Now onto our first unit, we have the Acolyte Globadiers. These are a Skryre focused unit. They have a short range shooting attack that can do some pretty decent damage. They are absolutely flimsy though, so they definitely want to be used in a protective way. They do have a way to protect themselves with the hidden weapon team special, allowing them to sort of not be targeted by nearby clan rats. But unfortunately, we don't get any clan rats in this initial box set, and there's not enough points in the first 1,000 to have them. So while you certainly could get clan rats and replace them or go on, it's not what we're going to suggest. With the fact that the new sort of season of Warhammer Age of Sigmar seems to be pushing towards more terrain, obscuring more of the battlefield, limiting shooting, this actually works in the favour of models like this, as you can hide them. 5 model unit of just small infantry models is easy to hide on the tabletop, so you're just going to be careful and mindful of how you use them, get them in range to get that damage dealt. When targeting large enemy units, their gas cloud ability allows them to get bonus damage to their D3 plus 1 damage when targeting units of 10 or more models. They also work well against infantry thanks to that anti-infantry rule they have built into those poison wind globes as well. Moving on, we then have the Warplock Jezzails. Now these are a longer range shooting unit, so while you want to sort of be careful on how you're positioning them to get them up close with your enemy for the poison wind globadiers, your Skryre acolytes, the Warplock Jezzails, on the other hand, you want to position so they've got clear lanes of fire throughout the game. They are slow with just a move of 6, so, you know, they don't want to be moving around. They want to have sort of a set position they want to take up and sort of have those lanes of fire dictated when you put them on the table. Now this is pretty cool because they do have crit auto wound on their range attack, which is a nice ability. Meaning every time you roll a 6 to hit, there's no need to roll to wound. Force to hit is probably their biggest weakness, but the Warpstone sniper rule means if this unit's not made a move, they get to add 6 to the range of their weapon. So this takes them to a whopping 24 inches of range, which is massive in modern Age of Sigmar. It might not sound like a lot, but Age of Sigmar over the course of the current edition has shrunk range back. So that is a relatively long range. You'll sort of see if you're coming from 40k or earlier editions of Age of Sigmar, even Old World, you'll realize that that is a decently long range in this game now. They put out decent rend, decent damage, and like I said, crit auto wound really just makes this unit quite effective at dealing some damage to heavily armored troops. Moving on from there, we then have the Warpvolt Scourges. Now this is the weapon team that I've chosen to go with. You could easily choose any of them that you want, but I believe these are sort of the best of the road. I do like Warpfire throwers, especially when combined with the Arch-Warlock, but they're short range. I think the Scourges, when you're sort of starting to play, the fact that we are going to not get the benefit of our hidden weapon team ability because we're not going to have clan rats in our force, makes these guys with a longer range easier to use in that initial part. Ratling guns would also be another decent choice, but I just feel the Scourges give you sort of a damaging unit that you don't really have anywhere else. The anti-cavalry rule is going to help you against cavalry blocks, which can tear through your units because you're generally going to be light on wounds in some of these artillery pieces, but also the crit 2 hits is really nice with a lot of attacks. They're going to put out some serious firepower, and just make use of that damage. Like the Globadiers, you do need to be careful, but that 15-inch range does allow you to set up avenues of fire, and particularly when you consider you can have covering fire for free on them, they can really do some damage over the course of battle rounds. Next up, we have the Ratling Warpblaster. This is a war machine for the Skaven, and it is essentially a giant rattling gun. You might have seen the rattling guns in your weapon team boxes. that you get for the Warpvolt Scourges. This is just a giant one on wheels. It packs out an incredible amount of shots with 3d6 plus 3 shots and a 20-inch range, which is really nice. This means that the model doesn't need to get right up in your enemy's face to be the most effective. Overwhelming Fire allows you to add one to hit rolls if you're shooting into large enemy units, so another great way to sort of go into enemy units of infantry. But also, more Warpstone Bullets means if this unit's in combat range of a friendly Skryre hero, the unit's hail of Warpstone Bullets has an attack characteristic of 6d6 plus 3 rather than 3d6 plus 3. So the fact that you've got that long range means you don't need to sort of have this unit running around the front and have a character out in the open. You can have that Arch-Warlock or another Skaven Skryre hero that you've got sort of walking around near it. However, for each unmodified hit roll of 1 when you use this ability, you do take some mortal damage in return as the thing sort of falls apart due to the sheer weight and disruption of it firing out so many shots. It's another good piece that's just going to do the whole thing that Skaven like doing, which is quantity over quality. Now lastly, inside the box set we get Stormvermin. These are elite Skaven bodyguard units. Now when I say elite, I mean elite for Skaven. You know, a 4+ save or 1 wound each, 3 attacks each, which is really nice, 3+4+, rend 1, damage 1 on their attacking profile. Anti-charge +1 rend is really cool because generally they are going to be a bodyguard unit with their elite bodyguard special rule, giving Skaven infantry heroes nearby them a 5-up ward. So they're going to be protecting heroes that are sitting on home base objectives and stuff like that. But they can also be a unit that you can get a decent amount of good buffs on to sort of charge in your enemy and actually do a decent amount of damage as well. And so, where to go next? The first thing we're going to look at is the gnaw holes. Now this is something we talked about previously in the army rules. They're an integral part of your army for the Skaven. They're going to allow you to bring units on the table, but they're also going to provide some other benefits as well. They are pieces you can walk on and get cover from, so that's something interesting to sort of consider. Some of your smaller units are able to hide them and get the benefits of cover, which is nice. But first of all, we have Volatile Ground, where mortals can pass through this terrain feature but cannot be set up or end moves on any part of this terrain feature. Each time an enemy unit ends a move that passed through or across this terrain feature, you do roll a d3 and potentially suffer some mortal wounds. This means, you know, you're getting cover by standing behind it, not on it. They are decently big, so you can sort of hide characters, you can hide small 5-man units, thinking your Skryre Acolytes, behind them to get a cover benefit. Now, tunnels through reality is the rule where you can sort of zip between one of these gnaw holes to another one on the table. So having multiple of these is going to be useful because it allows you to react quickly during the course of the game on some of your slower infantry blocks, or even getting shooting units into different lanes of fire. I was talking before about how we need to set up lanes of fire for the Warplock Jezzails and potentially your Ratling Warpblaster as well. So having these sort of dispositioned around the table so that you have different lanes of fire and can zip when you need to between the different pieces is a good way to sort of use them. The Endless Vermintide as well allows you to bring back some Skaven units that have been destroyed during the course of the game for the cost of a command point. So always good to have that replenishment in an army that really does have quite frail units. Moving on then to manifestations, we do have a wizard in the army in the initial box set, so grab those manifestations and build up your force. And the first one of these is going to be the Bell of Doom. This has a decent amount of attacks when it gets into combat and is rather random in its movement, but the big thing here is its Toll of Doom. Subtracting 1 from wound rolls for attacks that target friendly Skaven infantry while they're hollow within 13 inches of this manifestation is massive. Like I said, we have got relatively frail units in this box set, so being able to protect things like your Skryre Acolytes, like your weapon teams, are going to be incredibly useful with this. After that, we then have the Vermintide. Now this is literally just a giant swarm of rats. This is going to be the direct damage dealing one of your endless spells, the one you do sort of just shove into your enemy. With 13 attacks, crit, auto wound, 5s and 5s, there's nothing too crazy about the damage it can do, but it does heal d6 each turn, so it can be a relatively annoying endless spell on the tabletop. With 13 health, your opponent actually has to put a decent amount of, you know, attacks or damage into it. It's not like a normal average endless spell with that 6 or 7 or 8 wounds. That 13 means your opponent can't just throw a chaff in, it can't have a character attack it. You know, they have to put an actual useful combat unit to get rid of this, or it's going to go around being an annoying thing on the tabletop for them. And lastly, for endless spells, we have the Warp Lightning Vortex, another one that's going to do some damage, but in a different sort of way. You set this thing up on the tabletop with 3 different parts sort of forming a triangle on the table of some variation. And what this does is it stops your enemy moving and charging nearby by subtracting 2 from those. In addition, if any enemy unit passes through or around it, they take some damage as well. And also during the hero phase, it shoots out and does damage as well. So sort of like a big just sort of trap piece that you can use on the tabletop to deal damage, to sort of reduce your opponent's maneuverability on the table. When you combine this with the fact you are an army that wants to sort of potentially stay at range and shoot them off the table, it's a really cool piece to have access to. So, moving on to units, the only one we're going to look to add to this force is a Clawlord, and the reason we're going to do this is because we need a model that can actually take the Stormvermin in its regiments. This just stops our opponent getting any sort of benefits for us taking auxiliary units in the game. Now, the Clawlord itself is, you know, nothing too great of a hero. It's going to open up some options later in the line of, like, taking clan rats and stuff like that for your units, and other options on the table as well. 6 attacks, 3 4s, rend 1 damage 2, nothing too crazy, although he does get to add 3 to his attacks if he ever takes a wound, so if your opponent wounds this thing and doesn't kill it, it can actually turn into a nice little unit. You'll then Nash Gnaw on their bones is an ability where if this model fights against a dragon, a unit of verminous infantry, which can be either your clan rats or Stormvermin more importantly when we're considering what we've got in this army. And so the Skaven army we've built up in this box here is going to make use of the Warplock Convocation as our battle formation. The Skryre prototypes rules allows us to pick 3 friendly Skryre units, and then they potentially can deal some damage to themselves or get a bunch of different benefits by adding +1 to wound or going more power and get the +1 to wound and +1 rend to their ranged weapons. So really cool way to get more out of the shooting units we have access to. Our first regiment then has our Arch-Warlock. This model will be our general. And then for units inside the regiment, we have all the Skryre units we get with the Acolyte Globadiers, the Warplock Jezzails, the Warpvolt Scourges, and the Ratling Warpblaster in there as well. While our second regiment has the Clawlord as the regimental leader. This model's actually got the artifact of power of the Skaven brew, which is a once per game buff we can put onto the Stormvermin we have, and short tempered as well, allowing them to get into combat easier with the buffs to run and charge. And then, speaking of Stormvermin, they're the only unit inside its regiment which is a reinforced unit of them. Big blob that can really do some damage and protect our heroes at the same time. We hope this video was helpful in getting you started with Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and it was able to give you some ideas and inspiration to start your own force in the game. If you have any other questions at all, please comment down below, and while you're there, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and join our Discord server to check out all our future Warhammer Age of Sigmar content.